She said it like it was nothing. Like she was commenting on the weather instead of our marriage. If you don't like my life, then leave. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She was standing in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the strap of a black dress I hadn't seen before. The perfume she wore that night wasn't the soft one she used for date nights. It was stronger. Louder. Her phone lit up on the dresser. I didn't need to see the name. I already knew it was Ryan. Her male best friend. The guy I was told not to worry about. The harmless one. The safe one. The one who somehow needed her at every late-night birthday party, rooftop gathering, and last-minute celebration. I stood in the doorway and watched her apply lipstick slowly, carefully. She caught my reflection in the mirror. "You're doing that thing again," she said. "What thing?" I asked calmly, acting suspicious. "If you can't handle my friendships, that's your problem." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just asked, "Why does every event with him end at 3 in the morning?" She rolled her eyes. "You're exhausting." Then she grabbed her clutch, picked up her phone, and delivered the sentence that ended everything. "If you don't like my life, then leave. My name is Jason Carter. I manage regional operations for a logistics firm outside Denver. My job is built around preparation. I don't move trucks without scheduling. I don't sign contracts without reading fine print. I don't react without assessing risk. 4 months, I had been assessing my own marriage the same way. Late texts that made her smile. Phone calls taken in another room. Location sharing turned off after midnight. When I asked about Ryan, she framed it as insecurity. "You're controlling. You're jealous. You're overthinking." That's the strategy people use when they don't want scrutiny. They make you question your instincts. But instincts aren't random. They're pattern recognition. And I had enough patterns to stop pretending. That night, she walked past me with confidence, like she had already won the argument. She kissed my cheek lightly and said, "Don't wait up." I watched from the front window as a dark sedan pulled up. Ryan stepped out briefly, laughing before she even reached the car. She didn't look back at the house once. I stood there in the quiet entryway, feeling something settle inside me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Finality. When someone invites you to leave their life so casually, it means they've already imagined it without you. At 9:42 p.m., I called my brother. I didn't explain much. I didn't need to. "Bring the truck," I said. There was a pause on the other end. "Tonight?" he asked. "Tonight." He arrived at 10:18 p.m., backing into the driveway without headlights. The neighborhood was quiet. Most houses were dark. Ours would be too soon enough. I didn't take everything. I wasn't interested in stripping the place bare. I took what was mine. My clothes. My work files. My grandfather's toolbox. The watch my father gave me before he passed. The framed photos she'd stopped displaying years ago when they no longer fit her aesthetic. We worked efficiently. No noise. No anger. Just movement. Every drawer I emptied felt like a decision sealed. Every hanger removed was a chapter closing. By 11:30 p.m., my side of the closet looked like a hollow outline. By midnight, the office shelves were cleared of anything tied to me. The house didn't look destroyed. It looked divided. And that was intentional. I wasn't punishing her. I was separating myself. There's a difference. At 12:27 a.m., I logged into our joint account and transferred my documented share into a new one. Clean. Traceable. Responsible. This wasn't chaos. It was structure. By 1:10 a.m., the truck was half full. My brother didn't ask questions. He just handed me boxes and kept moving. The silence between us felt respectful, not awkward. At 1:45 a.m., I walked through the house slowly one last time. The living room still looked curated. Throw pillows aligned. Candles centered. Her world intact. The bedroom, however, told a clearer story. My dresser drawers were empty. The closet leaned heavily to one side, packed with her dresses and shoes. I paused in the doorway for a moment, remembering the first night we moved in. We had stood in this same room talking about future plans. Vacations. Children. Long-term goals. Funny how quickly future plans turn into archived memories. At 2:05 a.m., I sat at the kitchen counter and wrote one sentence on a single sheet of paper. I didn't draft it multiple times. I didn't overthink it. I wrote it cleanly. You told me to leave. So I did. I folded it once and placed it next to my wedding ring. No insults. No accusations. No emotional paragraphs. Just consequence. Words only carry power when they're final. At 2:30 a.m., I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me. At 3:04 a.m., my phone vibrated with the first notification from the door camera. She was home. The footage showed her laughing as she stepped inside, heels in one hand, phone in the other. The laughter faded almost immediately. The house was silent in a way it hadn't been before. No television glow. No hallway light. No familiar presence. She walked toward the bedroom first. That's when it hit her. The closet. Even through the camera, I could see her freeze. Her shoulders stiffened. She walked back into the hallway calling my name, her voice echoing in the empty space. Jason. No answer. She checked the office next. Then the garage. By 3:11 a.m., she was back in the kitchen. That's when she saw the envelope. She opened it slowly. The ring fell onto the counter first. Then the paper. I watched her read the sentence. Once. Twice. The confidence she'd worn earlier that night drained from her face. At 3:14 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer. At 3:16 a.m., she called again. Then again. At 3:20 a.m., the text started. Where are you? Stop this. We need to talk. By 3:27 a.m., her tone shifted. Jason, please. I didn't listen to the voice messages. I didn't respond to the texts. Silence, when intentional, is more powerful than argument. I was already at my brother's place across town, sitting on the edge of a guest bed surrounded by boxes. I didn't feel dramatic. I didn't feel heroic. I felt steady. That's what people misunderstand about leaving. It isn't about revenge. It's about alignment. When someone says, if you don't like my life, then leave, they expect resistance. They expect negotiation. They expect you to fight for position. They don't expect you to accept the invitation calmly. The next morning, she posted something vague on social media about hard seasons and miscommunication. Mutual friends began texting me carefully worded questions. I kept my response simple. She asked for space. I respected that. I didn't expose her. I didn't smear Ryan. I didn't share screenshots. But absence speaks. Especially when it's organized. By noon, she had called 23 times. By evening, she showed up at my brother's house. Her makeup was gone. Her tone was different. You didn't even argue, she said. You just left. I looked at her evenly. You told me to. She tried to frame it as impulsive, as dramatic, as an overreaction. It was just a party, she insisted. Ryan's just a friend. I didn't debate definitions. I asked a single question. Why did my concerns never matter? She didn't answer immediately. That pause said more than explanation would have. Over the next week, conversations shifted from emotional to practical. Bills. Lease options. Account separations. I handled everything methodically. She alternated between apology and accusation, unsure which approach would move me. You're giving up too easily, she said one afternoon. I shook my head. I'm respecting what you said. That frustrated her more than anger would have. She wanted passion. Conflict. A fight worth dramatizing. What she got was structure. Ryan, I later learned, had grown distant. The fun energy of late-night dancing doesn't translate well into daylight accountability. Once our separation became real, his involvement cooled. That detail didn't satisfy me. It confirmed something I already knew. Some men enjoy proximity to someone else's stability. Few volunteer to replace it. She began to understand that too. Not loudly. Not publicly. Quietly. And quiet realizations tend to linger longer than public arguments. 2 weeks later, we met at a small cafe to discuss final arrangements. She looked tired, not physically, but internally. I didn't think you'd actually leave, she admitted. I believed her. People often speak recklessly when they assume safety nets exist. I sipped my coffee and answered evenly. You weren't asking me to stay. That landed. She stared at the table, tracing the edge of her cup. I thought you'd fight for us. I held her gaze. I did. 4 months. You just called it insecurity. The conversation didn't escalate. It softened. That's the strange part about real endings. They don't explode. They settle. We discussed logistics calmly. Division of furniture. Closing joint subscriptions. Forwarding mail. It felt less like the collapse of a marriage and more like the careful dismantling of something already broken. As we stood to leave, she hesitated. Ryan wasn't worth this, she said quietly. I nodded once. That wasn't the point. The point was dismissal. The point was respect. The point was being told to leave like my presence was optional. When someone reduces you to negotiable, the healthiest response isn't persuasion. It's departure. Life stabilized quickly after that. I found a small townhouse closer to work and focused on rebuilding routine. Morning runs. Late work sessions. Dinner with friends I hadn't seen consistently in years. Stability returned not in grand moments, but in repetition. She reached out occasionally, each message more reflective than the last. There was no more defiance in her tone. Just recognition. I didn't realize how far we drifted, she wrote once. I responded honestly. Drift requires both people. Dismissal requires one. That difference mattered. Months earlier, I might have tried to convince her of my value. Now, I understood something simpler. Value doesn't beg. It withdraws. Mutual friends stopped asking questions. The narrative became clear without my input. No scandal. No dramatic revelations. Just consequence. I heard Ryan had moved on quickly. That detail didn't surprise me. Nightlife thrives on momentum, not permanence. Meanwhile, I renovated my new place slowly, choosing furniture deliberately. There's something grounding about building space that reflects you instead of accommodating someone else's version of life. I slept better. I worked better. I thought clearer. Sometimes freedom doesn't feel explosive. It feels quiet. The legal process remained straightforward. We divided assets cleanly, respecting documentation and shared agreements. No courtroom theatrics. No last-minute sabotage. Just signatures and acknowledgement. During our final meeting, she looked at me carefully. You were colder than I expected, she said. I considered that. I was clearer than you expected, I corrected. There's a difference between coldness and clarity. Coldness seeks to wound. Clarity seeks to end confusion. Outside the office, she paused before walking away. Do you hate me? She asked. I answered truthfully. No. I learned. That seemed to hurt more than anger would have. Growth doesn't always comfort the people left behind. But it's necessary. That night, I sat alone in my new living room, not feeling victorious, not feeling broken. Just settled. The house was smaller than the one we shared. The closet wasn't divided. The silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. When someone tells you to leave, you have two options. Argue for space or accept it. I chose acceptance. Not because I lacked love. Because I required respect. Months later, we crossed paths at a mutual friend's birthday gathering. The energy between us wasn't hostile. It was distant. She approached carefully, as if unsure how close she was allowed to stand. I didn't understand what I was risking, she admitted. I nodded. You weren't calculating risk. You were assuming security. That's what long relationships create, the illusion of permanence. But permanence isn't guaranteed. It's maintained. We spoke briefly about work and life updates. Nothing emotional. Before she stepped away, she said quietly, When I came home that night and saw the closet empty, I realized you were serious. I looked at her evenly. I had been serious for a long time. The difference was that this time I acted. People mistake departure for impulsiveness. In reality, departure is often the final step after repeated dismissal. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply nodded. That was the first honest moment we'd shared in months. Looking back now, I don't frame that night as destruction. I frame it as direction. I didn't shatter her world. I stepped out of a version of life that no longer respected my presence. When she said, "If you don't like my life, then leave," she believed I would challenge her. She believed I would negotiate for space. Instead, I chose alignment. At 3 in the morning, she walked into a silent house and empty closets not because I wanted revenge, but because I honored her words. The sentence I left behind wasn't cruel. It was literal. "You told me to leave. So I did." That was enough. Some men scream. Some men argue. Some men beg. Others evaluate. And when evaluation confirms what dismissal already proved, they exit. Calmly. Completely. Permanently. In the end, I didn't destroy anything. I reclaimed myself. And that, more than anger ever could, changed everything.